Aloha everybody and welcome to the Wild Wahine. This is Kaylani and welcome to this week's Astro forecast. Thank you so much for tuning in today. So we do have a lot of things to talk about. Three major things. We're talking about a new moon in Taurus, one. Second thing we're going to talk about is Mercury trining Saturn. And the third thing that we're going to talk about is Jupiter's ingress into the sign of Pisces. So we'll start with the new moon in Taurus that's happening the 11th, and that's going to be at 21 degrees Taurus. So the moon is exalted in the sign of Taurus. It's a very beautiful place for the moon to be. It loves to be there. The moon tends to be a very watery, receptive, dreamy, creative space. And it loves us being like nestled in the security of Taurus, where it's Venus ruled. So there's going to be a lot of Venusian energy. That is the ruler of this moon. And Venus just recently moved into the sign of Gemini. So it's a little bit more chatty. It's a little bit more sociable. It's a little bit more gregarious. It wants to read and to talk to people and to have fun and share ideas and share money and have things that go back and forth. So there's going to be this really interesting quality to this moon of being, because it is a new moon, kind of reflective, starting a new beginning and planting seeds and doing all of the things that like feel like new moon things, like relaxing, all of the aspects that are happening to the moon are trines. We have a trine in Pluto and a trine in Neptune. So it's just a really like beautiful open new moon where you can use the time for really two things, which I suggest for you guys to do. You can use it to really like plan and set what you want to put into motion. So if you want to use the time to like have a pen and pad or however it is that you plan, if it's on your computer or whatever, listing out the things that you want, you're kind of like putting together where you want to go in the future. Or you can use this time to just relax and allow things to come to you, allow new ideas to come to you. If you've already been like a list maker and you have a lot of things that you're doing and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm feeling overwhelmed, you can use this time to say, I'm going to relax into this. I'm going to think about the things that I have to do, but I actually just, I'm going to allow for the first thing that I have to do to come to me. So you can really take this time to take care of yourself and really do the things to luxuriate in, make yourself some really delicious tea. You can make yourself some soup. I know that we're going into summer and I live in Hawaii, guys, so it's like 83, 84 degrees almost like every day, but I like still make soup and tea because that's just how I roll. But, whatever it is that makes you feel good, order some food in, have some yummy leftovers, like don't work too hard. Just use this time to enjoy. If we're talking about more the Venusian aspect of it, because Venus is in Gemini right now, calling a friend, spending some time chatting, have like tea and chat date, invite somebody over, talking to friends or even with siblings would be a good time because Gemini kind of rules brothers and sisters and siblings or people in your life that feel like siblings. Chatting with them, it doesn't have to necessarily be on the new moon, but it could be like any time around that time. You should have some really good conversations. The new moon is always about like, the new beginnings. It's a new cycle that we're walking into. And this one's going to feel so much better than the full moon that's coming at the end of the month because that's an eclipse. So that's always going to be, eclipses are shady and that's like no pun intended, but they are, so I'm like, enjoy the new moon, enjoy it because, later on in the month, things might get a little tricky with that full moon. Next up, we have Mercury trining Saturn. That is perfecting on the 12th, but we're feeling it now and we're going to feel it all the way into the 14th. So Mercury, our planet of communication, of our mind, of things that exchange money. Mercury is in its home sign in Gemini. And Saturn has to do with structure. It has to do with limitation. It has a cold kind of quality. It's about old wisdom and old soul and old knowledge. So Saturn is in its home sign in Aquarius. So we have these two planets that are in their home sign, which means they're in the place where they feel most powerful, where they feel most available to give their beautiful things. And they're having this conversation, and this conversation is in a trine, so it's a positive conversation that they're having. And so with this mercurial energy that we have right now in Gemini, with wanting to talk and wanting to do things and wanting to launch this and launch that and create this and create that and make money and spend money and all of those kinds of things, sometimes that can be a bit chatty. Sometimes that can be really, really buzzy, even when it's in its home sign. Sometimes it feels like, oh, if I could just write these things down, if I could just get this energy focused, because it's kind of flittering all over the place. So with this trine to Saturn, such a beautiful time for you to stick the landing, for you to really like hone in on specifically what you want to do and set some limitations or give yourself some structure around that. So Saturn is a very interesting taskmaster. It really, for a lot of people, can feel like, oh my gosh, Saturn, like here it comes with the limitations, here it comes with the challenges, here it comes with all this hard work, and then finally I reap the reward, but why does it always have to be hard? You know, why does it always have to take so long? And sometimes it's just like that. You know, sometimes you have to work at something. Sometimes, you know, it takes a while to become a master at something. If you think about martial arts, you do have to put in the time so that you can get that like high, you know, degree. You're putting in a lot of times. There's a certain amount of fight hours you have to have in order to be a good boxer. There's a certain amount of hours you have to do swimming and bicycling and running for you to be a triathlon athlete and to win. So it's the time spent that we put in doing something. And it's also the repetitiveness of doing it over and over again, learning something. Sometimes you go back to it. So that whole process is what allows us to have greatness. And so for this particular aspect, I love it for that, because it's like we're putting in the work and we're doing it and we're being structured about it and we're being organized about it and we're going to reap those rewards at the end. So I love that. Having the discipline that you need in order to get the ideas that are in your head out on paper and to implement them so that they can actually become real in your life and like actually do the things that you want them to do. It also has to do with like old information or old wisdom, or wisdom potentially coming from an older person or a mentor that's coming down to you. It could be a mentor that passed on information to you and now you want to like help them write a book about it. It could be just old things coming into new ears or new information, and then it kind of being spread out like in some kind of techie way, like on social media or the internet, just gaining more information from like old stories or old news. Or it also is the passing down of information from older people to the youth. So I think of it like a conversation between grandparents and their grandchildren as they pass down that information. If you teach me all that you've learned, you teach me from your mistakes, you teach me from the things that you did well, and then I'm going to teach you how to innovate on that. I'm going to teach you like how to open your phone and use your phone, grandparents. So I'm really looking forward to getting some grounded and getting some things solid for that. And so use, you know, the next couple of days for that if you really want to solidify some of those things. So next up we have Jupiter ingressing or entering the sign of Pisces. Jupiter is one of our great benefic planets. It's going to be entering finally the sign of Pisces, which is its home. We're feeling great because Jupiter, you know, was stuck in Capricorn, which is Saturn ruled. Both hands was tied behind his back in Capricorn. And then we have Jupiter moving into the sign of Aquarius, which is also Saturn ruled. So then one hand was free to kind of sort of work some magic, but the other hand was behind the back. And now we have Jupiter in the sign of Pisces, and Jupiter is doing jazz hands. Yes, I said jazz hands. He's able to do all of the beautiful work that he came here to do, and I'm super loving it and ready for it. So with Jupiter in Pisces, let me tell you guys the dates. That's going to be starting on the 13th of May all the way until July 28th. On May 21st, it is going retrograde, but it will be in the sign of Pisces for 2.5 months. Then after that, Jupiter will be hanging back out in Aquarius, which is Saturn ruled. So it's going to be a little bit muted like we've been experiencing thus far until the end of the year, until December 28th, which it moves back into Pisces. So this is really interesting what Jupiter is doing, like in terms of its relationship with Pisces, and Pisces is a mutable sign. It's kind of dipping in and out of Pisces. So it's doing this really interesting like tango with Pisces this year and next year. Jupiter, what does Jupiter stand for? So Jupiter is about religion, it's about spirituality, it's about knowledge, it's about gaining information. Jupiter's nickname is actually the guru. So it's bringing in like positivity and bringing in optimism. It's all about like expansion and making things bigger. It makes great things bigger. It also can make not so great things bigger too. So we have to be careful, and depending upon like where Jupiter is, there are some things that we want to grow really, really big, like our pockets and our bank accounts. There's other things that we don't want to grow big, like sickness or, you know, weight. Or it's all about like the big picture, looking at things in terms of the large sense. It's not so much detailed oriented. Now with the sign of Pisces, we're talking about a water sign. So we're talking about things that have to do with emotions, things that might also have to do with literally water. So it could just also mean like lots of rain that we're getting. It could be some flooding that's happening. Hopefully not tsunamis, but you know, it is Jupiter in Pisces, so who knows? Lots of water coming to you. Hopefully it's going to all the areas that are really dry right now. the areas that need nourishment, the areas that need quenching. And that has to do with like physically in our lives, like literally the parched land, but it also could mean it in a metaphorical sense, like the parts of us that are parched, the parts of us during this whole time that have been very dried out, that has been separated, the parts of us that haven't felt very watered, that hasn't felt very nurtured, especially from everything that we've been in. So it could be the deluge of emotion that we're actually able to feel things, we're allowing ourselves to feel things, and we're allowing ourselves to open up and to connect with others, and to be open to being nourished by arts, which is something that has really suffered during this whole time, and with other people and dating and relationships and all of those things that come with Piscean things, which has to do with like romance and beauty and art and all of those things. So when we have Jupiter, it's in its domicile. Again, it's in its home in Pisces. And this week is so interesting. I love like the aspects and everything that's happening, because planets in their home just do what they're supposed to do, and they do it well, and it looks good on them, and it feels generally pretty good to us, depending upon how it's aspected, of course. But generally speaking, it feels good. And generally, when you have a great benefic planet in its home, able to just like dole out all the goodies, it's like Halloween, and you go to that house that has like the best Halloween candy, and you're like, yes, this is like whole bars, like not the little bars. So Jupiter's also right now in Pisces, which is in its feminine sign. So when it's in Sagittarius, that's when it's expressing its more masculine sense, and we're talking about kind of archetypal. So when Jupiter is in Pisces, it's in its yin phase. It's expressing itself as the great guru and as the teacher, but with a feminine spin to it. So of course, there's going to be more attraction there. There's going to be deeply getting into your intuition. It's going to be more meditative. It's going to be focused more on the spirituality as opposed to the religious ideology. Religion a lot of times has to do more with like structure. It has to do with dogma. It has to do with rituals and routines, like the kind of things that keep the order. And that's the thing with Jupiter. Jupiter is all about like law and order and keeping things a certain way. Things can flow seamlessly. When Jupiter is expressing itself in its feminine sign of Pisces, it's saying like, I'm all about the exploration of spirituality. It's kind of the place where religion is born. It is that inspiration that someone had when they were like going to a pilgrimage, or the vision that they had when they were taking whatever herb or whatever to say like, I have this level of enlightenment, and now I want to share it with the world. Later on, as it goes through all the hands, it kind of sort of becomes a thing we call religion. But it actually started with this spiritual sense. It's all about like education and learning. So there's it's learning from more of a kinesthetic learner. It's a more visual learner, because it's like so much to do with like the arts and things that you're actually feeling and experiencing. So with Jupiter and Pisces, a couple things that'll come up is it will amplify wherever it's placed in your house, like whatever house it's placed in your chart, it's going to amplify that. It's going to make it bigger. So wherever you see it, that's where it's going to be making it rain, right? I think there'll be like a lot of, because it's Piscean, a lot of healing, which is something that I think we still need with everything that's going on in the world. We have so many broken hearts. We have so many people who feel unheard. We have so many people who feel scared. We have people who are very confused. So many things that are happening where we're a little bit broken right now, just really all in the whole world. So I'm hoping that this energy is going to bring some deep healing to that, and really allow us to feel our emotions, because many of us have been running away from it because we're just trying to deal with everyday life and just survive. So it should be a time where people are going to want to probably escape reality. Jupiter's making things big. Pisces loves to escape things, so there is that quality of that too, like maybe on the negative side, in a very extreme sense, can look like abusing alcohol, drugs, all kinds of things that will take you out of the world, having other like psychedelic spiritual experiences, all of those things everybody does within whatever type of moderation that they do. But with Jupiter in play, the likelihood of it running a bit of amok and you not being able to control it as much, or not being able to moderate or have temperance with it, is huge. So you just want to make sure that you're watching and checking in on yourself with your indulgence in things, because when we talk about Pisces, we're often talking about indulging in the love and the romance and the escape and the creativity. So we just want to make sure that we're not jumping off the deep end. So there we have it. We have this week's astrology forecast. Thank you guys so much for joining in. If you have any questions, you know you can DM me or you can email me at kaylani@thewildwahine.com. You can find me on www.thewildwahine.as.me if you want to book a one-on-one. So thank you guys so much for tuning in, and I hope you have a fantastic week and look out.